Well, hello, Dr. Lemmon here, and this is my Q&A series on the playlist with wizardscatch.com. Uh, so the YouTube channel is Wizards Catch Channel. It's WIZARDSCACHE, and it's a little coffee. Much better. I was just out raking some leaves. We've had a couple of days of rain. So I've got a little bit of dust going on, but it's trimming some trees and raking. Anyway, a little sunshine, so I got to go to work. It's life is so demanding. I'm doing this Q&A video because I've got a few questions on range that came up. I know that video was really long. Some people loved the fact that it was long, but a lot of people thought, So anyway, I do a couple of questions. As a matter of fact, quite a few questions have come in, but I'm just going to answer the ones on range on this one, so I can keep it somewhat short to at least keep part of the world happy. The rest of you just suffer through it. The idea of range is that the idea in a logical system, everything has to come into the context of what we call language. It has to be a logical portion. Language is a name for a symbol that we see. So it's all logical pieces. It's all divided into pieces. So range comes from the imagined system, right? So range would be, totally imagined, would be the range of all possibilities. It would be unbelievably huge, everything imaginable. But what we did is that we took that and divided it, say, by 11 billion people. So everybody gets a slice of infinity. I'm not all that sure in a logical system we could work that math out. But it would have to be, even 1/11 billionth of infinity is got to be a bigger piece than money I have in my bank account right now. So you start to see, it's almost like you have a slice that goes on for infinity. And within that is the range of your potential. That range of potential gets integrated by relationships with people. All people together have all the potential. We just have individually have a slice, big slice, probably far more than anybody could do in a lifetime. The reason we don't see all of that in one thing is the same reason that we only have 7 plus or minus 2 consciousness. We would mess it all up. It's too much distraction. We have too narrow a range of attention, right? But we can work with all those because we can change ranges as much as we want to. We can switch between them. We could enlarge them. We could even share, which what we see in startup companies, 7 or 8 people get together, they put ideas together, they come up with business plans. That's not one person's potential, that's 7 or 8 people contributing. You see, the ramifications to this are unlimited as long as we engage. If we sit there by ourselves and say, I don't know what I'm going to do, well, I'm sorry, you just narrowed your range down to I'm sitting here not knowing what I'm doing, which is 0 range. Get this? It's 0 range. I used to tell a story that I would do a lot of introductory talks, and I'd see people come in, and then I would do another one next month, and some of the same people would come back, and some of the same people, new people would come in, and then a couple of people would come back with questions. By the third time, it would be all new people or this collection of people that seemed to come 5 or 6 or 7 times. So I did have a question from way back then. I remember answering. It's kind of appropriate for this. People said, why do some of these people have to come back 5 or 6 times, Chris, before they can decide to take a class from you or just to write you off and walk away? I said, because your range is not big enough. I explained something to them, and then they come in the next time at a different range. So when you hear me answer their question, same question they asked last month, but now they're in a different range. I have to match their range and answer it within the context of that range. Then they got it. And they have to come 5 or 6 times because they live in about 5 or 6 ranges of who they are, ideas of who they are. They're a person that's in a relationship. There's a person that has a job. There are all those different ranges or pieces, but not an integration. They can't integrate that. So when you ask them to integrate or ask them a question like, how's your kids? And they go, oh, fine. Now you go, Well, you don't see any energy. There's no enthusiasm. There's no like, oh, they're great, blah, 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 like some people do. And you see that and you go, wow. So you wait a few minutes and you say, so what the kids been up to? Anything new? And they go, oh, and then all of a sudden they switch into the range about the kids. And then they talk for the next hour about their kids. And you just say, what did I just do? I just open a bag of range. But they can't make that range. They cannot make that range open up. So that's a learning curve. That's a tool that we try to get you to learn, to expand that out in the nature of an application. So we can see more. We can get it expanded out so we can step into it and have all that range about us. It's like every party you go to is your party, not because it's all about you, but because of the fact that you are in that range. It doesn't have to be all about you. That was a question. I'm not advocating narcissism. I know in the workshops, we talk about arrogance. So the component is that a certain thing called certainty comes into play. Let me explain this. If I have a few details of an event or a story, I just saw an accident. I saw part of it I missed. I'm trying to figure out how that person got on the wrong side of the street, what went over here, what was going on there. We all do this, right? You see skid marks in the street, and you see a tree get smashed, and you think, oh my goodness, how'd they get over from here to there? We fill in the gaps. When we fill in the gaps to make the story with part evidence and part we just made up, to make the story complete, we take a breath and we now feel confident and certain that we just put it all together. And you made up most of it. You get this? So we can't rely on you feeling certain because you feel certain about stuff you make up. We has to be enough drive to say, I have an idea what happened. I'm going to check the paper. I'm going to check around a little bit. I'm interested if my idea is right or not. Now we're pushing it to the point of trying to prove I'm right, not to someone else, but to you. And when you do that, that's a nature of saying, I'm arrogant enough to see if I'm right. I'm going to check on that, by gosh. I'm going to see if I figured it out right. I'm going to see what, if I got it right, just for the fun of it. Not a big deal. I'll probably never have a conversation about this, but I'm just curious. Okay, that's the piece we're looking for. Because you start to build into that, you start to have a sense of strength of who you are. Now, guess what? As soon as you get more and more accurate data because you have looked it up, your database for predictions increases. And therefore, your predictive, the stories you just make up, become far more accurate. And that's what's really interesting. We just need to improve the database. Never gets perfect. Not a perfect game because pieces we make up. But we get closer and closer, right? So a professional is someone who looks at someone, whether they're a mechanic or a doctor or whatever, and they make an assessment. An assessment is you make up a story about what's wrong. You get this? And you use your predictive skills. So it means you better have gone to school and got a really good database or worked at it for a few years. So your database is up to date. And then your predictions are far more accurate. If the predictions are based on assumptions and not really accurate, we call that noise. Noise in a system. We used to think when I was in school engineering, we figures around 10%. Now today, we think it's probably more like 40%, which is really kind of scary. From statistical data we have, it indicates that it's probably up between 40%. Judges in cases that should be similar, insurance people that review cases and make estimates on the damage to repair to your car, they vary by as much as 40, 42, 43%. It's unbelievable how much noise is in a system. So really, we need more anchors to secure a source of information so we can stay more consistent. That means that we have to put some effort into it, not just look it up somewhere and say, oh, I have looked up stuff and then got in conversation and said, hey, I looked it up and this is what it said. And then we'll have a discussion with people who knew more than me did. And I started looking up again and I realized, oh, I wasn't really careful who I got the information from, because there's a lot of fools like me putting out stuff on the internet. You better not believe me. You better take whatever I say, entertain that a little bit, get arrogant with it and see if it works for you. If it doesn't, throw it away. If it works for you, great. It should expand your range out a little bit. That's the whole idea. Now, the main job, once we get all our ranges expand, we then interact with people. As we interact with people, we share our range with their range, and we're getting more and more towards wholeness. You see, the two work together. Relationships, creation, the ability to imagine, right? And range. They all work together to move us in the direction of a nice, balanced whole piece. Right now, we have a lot of fragmented pieces and a lot of people making assumptions. Come on, look at the news. It's been that way for a long time. All right. And then you find the backstory a week or two later, and you find it on page 12 of the paper, and it found out that the assumptions they made in the beginning were all just BS, and it all narrows down to something, right? Because right now, putting big bylines up is highlighting things, so it makes people pay attention, gets their attention. You guys, you got to look into a range. You got to start to expand. You start to be, I want to find out. Knowing things, diversifying things, reading books, listening to people, talking to people, expands range out, gives you more of a sense of certainty about who you are and your ability to predict, which makes for a healthier life, because that same device that predicts conditions in the world you live in is the same one that produces your metabolic rate. And if your metabolic rate is always in line with the conditions, the temperature and everything else going on, then you're healthier. You get this, this all ties together. It's not 9 or 10 things. It's just one big package called you, right? And it's actually much bigger than you. It's one big package called humanity. And I really think we're moving in the direction of being able to get a better comprehension and at least a better workaround with all of that complexity, right? It is complex. It does require your attention. Please pay attention, read a book, have a conversation, send me a question. That makes some sense. Okay, so that's the nature of ranges. Really important, they're a gift. We don't have to do anything for them. You didn't have to do anything to create yourself. You just started to imagine you in this field that we have stimulus response from. We have 5 sensory input, right? And we start to imagine ourselves in there, but we're predicting us in it. And then we're starting to predict wellness for us, we're predicting opportunity for us. But now we're engaged because now we're in it. We're in the range, engaging, expanding potential. Otherwise, it would just be all random, just a dice game. We're not really random. So that tells you that we're above random. Our death rate's not 50%, we're above random. We start to look at that and we realize that we're influencing not only other people, we're influencing the idea of who we are. And that's the goal. We want to be able to have tools and techniques to influence the idea. It's not some superpower, it's not some mystery. It's just that when you're engaged, you're a little more cautious and a little more aware, right? And so you reduce the risk of just getting run over by something. You're paying attention. And that's where we want to go. If that made some sense, thank you very much for the questions. They were great. And I had a bunch of them, and rather than, I just threw it all together and made a little shorter talk. So I'm going to cut this to short to make the people that, can't listen more than 5 or 6 or 7 minutes and they get confused. That's fine and good. And the people that like long-winded ones, just, keep playing the videos over and over again. What the heck? I've got another one coming up with a question that I will do probably in the next couple of days. So it's been really fun. I look forward to your questions. I hope this is useful to you. And so this is chris@wizardscatch.com is where you email me. The only way you can get a hold of me is email me. I don't answer phones. I don't carry one. So email me and any questions you have, any ideas you have. If you run into people that say, well, that's like, the term that's like is a tool to narrow your range. nothing is like something else. So a total open range is the ability to identify the uniqueness of anything. Closing thought. So when the range gets big enough, pretty soon you can identify the uniqueness of you. And then your influence for you becomes pretty powerful. That's the whole idea, right? Cool. Okay. Thank you very much. And it's been fun.